Hello hunters, I hope you're doing well. In this video, we'll go back to the basics and refresh our knowledge about hunter types. I'm not talking about the hunter classes, which are the assassin, fighter, healer, ranger, mage, and tank. I'm talking about the damage dealers, the DPS, supports, and the breakers. And for this specific video, we'll be talking about the breakers. So, what are breakers and what do they do? As the term implies, the breakers are the hunters that breaks the enemy's break gauge, or they deal damage to the enemy's break gauge. They are essential for making the fight easier. They're also good on disrupting some enemies that channels very powerful attacks. The next is, how do you identify if a hunter is a breaker? Well, thanks to the latest patch, there's now an identifier for hunter if he or she is a breaker. For example, on Gogan he will check on the skills. If you see this icon like a broken shield icon, then that means this hunter is a breaker type. Or else you can also just read here on its skill description. It will say something like deals weak break damage, medium, heavy, and almighty. So yeah, the last part, the highest break damage is almighty, which I usually just see on Sungjin. Not sure if everyone has it here, but yeah, you can see most of the almighty with Sungjin's skills rather. The same on this one. Okay, then moving forward, when should you use a breaker? You will use a breaker if the enemy boss has a break gauge. And to identify that, you just have to check before you start the battle. You can go here and check the boss's passive. If the boss's passive has this icon like the spear and says something about the break gauge, then that means when you encounter or battle this one, then they will have a break gauge. So let's just see it in action. And as you know, Goto is a breaker. So the expected is he should be able to deal break damage. And as you can see on his skills, there is the identifier for the breaker skill. As you can see here, below its HP, there's a yellow bar. That is the enemy's break gauge. And by using my skills, like I'll use my second skill here, you can see it has his break gauge, or the enemy's break gauge has been reduced. And if I do more, or until every break gauge is depleted, then this boss will be in break state, meaning they will take more damage. They'll be stunned for a while, giving us more time to deal damage. And this will make the fight easier since they will be suffer, or their buff that damage decrease will be gone as long as the break gauge is already removed. As you can see here, the centipede doesn't have any break gauge, and you should deal more damage for that. The next part would be, there are actually bosses that regenerates the break gauge, but it will only be on rare occasions, especially on Battlefield of Time, Power of Destruction, and I think on other limited game modes as well. But you can check if the boss has a or you can check if the boss can regenerate its break gauge by, again, not going yet on the fight, but checking on the boss passive. If you can check, or if you can see the spear with recycle or refresh icon, then that means after his break gauge is removed, it will regenerate after a few seconds, most likely 10 to 15. Okay, let me just try here. It should be fine. Let's proceed. Oh, okay, I don't think this will work since I think I'll one-shot Tigris on this, but yeah, I'll just try to break if it's possible. Okay, this broken. Oh, my bad. Let me retry. I went with an extra skill. Okay, let me remove, I think, at least this artifacts here, or maybe all. Should be. This should make Tigris not delete with my first combo. Okay, let's try again. You can see break gauge below Igris, and let's try to remove it. Now that it's broken, again, this will make him take a lot more damage, and after a few seconds, his break gauge should be back. Oh. Okay, as you can see, the refresh icon is blinking, meaning his break gauge will be back, and there it is. And this will go refreshing until you finish the fight. So you need to make sure to deal or start up your damage while Igris is in the break state, and break him again when his break gauge is back. Okay, I think that's it for that part. And yeah, you should be good to go on how breakers are, what do they do, how do you identify a breaker, and when you should do, or when you should bring a breaker rather. Now let's go ahead and talk about the current breaker or breakers in the game. Usually the breakers are on defense and support, but let's just proceed with everyone without going in order. Okay, so the current breakers in the game is Essel, Goto, Harper, Goganhi, Sojiwoo, Emma, Woo Jinchul, Lim Taegyu, Baek Yunho, and the SSR, can't remember, Yu Jinho, and Kim Chul. Yeah, I guess that's it. And currently, the top breakers for the game is Goganhi, Goto Ryuji, and Essel Radiru. But that doesn't mean that you'll always use them on any bosses that you will encounter. Because for example, let's go on instance and go here on the Hobgoblin leader. As you can see, the recommended element for him is wind, meaning all wind attacks will deal extra 50% damage. That means you would want to bring windbreakers like Goto Ryuji and Fujin Sho, because they will deal not just elemental damage but also more break damage. If you try to bring Gogani here, even though he is one of the best breakers in the game, he will have lesser break damage compared to Goto and Wujin Sho. No, rather just Goto. I think Wujin Sho's break is far less, given its weakness to wind. But you get the point. You would always try to bring a breaker that is the weakness of the boss. Deal more damage to deal more break damage and to break them faster. Yeah, you can see it. You can also see it here. The down icon, meaning they are not strong on this boss, because the boss will now have like incoming light attacks deal 50% damage, or this is more likely that the incoming light attacks will deal 50% less damage, meaning he'll deal less damage. Okay, I think that's it, and let's go ahead and check on the artifacts. The current artifacts for breakers. Currently, there are just two artifacts that are catered for breakers. It will be the Solid Analysis and Burning Greed. Let's go first with the Solid Analysis. Okay, here. The 2-piece set, it increases the break effectiveness by 15%. And the 4-piece effect grants another, or enhances the 2-piece into 30% break efficiency, as long as the one they're hitting is their elemental weakness. So this will also point to what we have discussed earlier, to always bring a breaker that is the weakness of the boss. So aside they will deal more break damage, they'll also increase the break efficiency by 30%, meaning they'll be breaking 30% faster compared to you don't have this set, or not using a hunter that is the weakness of the boss. The next set is the Burning Greed. This set is also more recommended to use rather than the Solid Analysis. It's because of its passive, that when you equip 8-piece set or even 4-piece set, it can provide additional crit hit damage and crit hit rate, not just for the user but for the entire team. And the duration is permanent, meaning as long as you have stacked it initially, those buffs will last until the dungeon ends or you clear it. So that's its advantage than using this one, because this one, it will just purely increase the break damage of the user. It doesn't provide any buff to your team. So if you can get the Burning Greed set, I recommend you do so and put it to your breakers. And lastly, we've mentioned earlier that Sang Jinwoo has the Almighty Break skills mostly, right? But can Sang Jinwoo be having a breaker build? Or is it recommended for Sang Jinwoo to do a breaker build? In my opinion, I don't think so. Sang Jinwoo is better suited to have a attacking sets, like for example armed one hit kill. You can also do if you like the ultimate setup. You like the burning curse. This would be your top one since this will increase your damage by a lot of percent. And yeah, I guess that's it for the armor sets. And for the right side, it will be only expert, champion of the field, or executioner or berserker. So basically what I'm saying is you don't want or you shouldn't build Sang Jinwoo as a breaker build or as a breaker, because that means you're trying to make him as a support, and making him as a support doesn't really work well since you'd like Jinwoo to deal more or as much damage as he can, so you can clear contents. Maybe aside doing Power of Destruction or maybe Guild Boss, maybe you can do breaker builds there to to further enhance your other hunter carries like Mirai, Cha, Thomas. But aside those scenarios, you shouldn't put break builds on Sang Jinwoo. Okay, I guess that's it for this refresher course. And just a summary. Breakers are essential to your team setup, especially if especially if the boss has a break gauge. It will make the game or the content clear faster because they'll deal more damage. They're also helpful to cancel a channeling skill of the users, like Daimos, the Encore mission or instance dungeon bosses. Like, there are some points in here that you'll need to cancel their break. If you don't, then you'll get a lot of damage. So plus points for the breakers and that. Also, what are the others? You should also you should always bring the breaker hunter that is the weakness type of the boss for more break damage. And lastly, make sure to not put breaker builds for Sang Jinwoo. Yep, that's it. And if ever I have missed something, let me know in the comments and we'll address that there. But for now, I hope you liked it. And if you do, make sure to leave a like, comment, and share to your friends to let them refresh their knowledge about Hunter Breakers. Thanks for watching, Hunters, and I'll see you on the next one.